We're now joined by the Queensland Premier David Crisafulli to give us an update on the situation there. Good morning, Premier. How are things looking in Queensland this morning?
Windy and wet, Richard. There was definitely overnight, there was some more of those wind gusts, including even inland to a place, a beautiful city called Toowoomba, where there was wind gusts of nearly 100 kilometres an hour. So it gives you an indication that the system has continued to pack a punch. Today, the risk is around rainfall leading to flooding, and that's whether that's localised flooding through a creek or river flooding. There is that challenge there, but it's a challenge that Queenslanders deal with, and we'll continue to put that information out, and I have every faith that people will be able to handle that. We're just asking them to stay up to date, know the information, and we've got every faith they'll deal with it.
And you mentioned the wild and woolly weather overnight. It caught a lot of people off guard because I think a lot of people were expecting that the worst was over with ex-tropical Cyclone Alfred being downgraded. Were there enough warnings about the strong winds that you had overnight?
These systems always continue to provide challenges in the way they approach, in the way that they continue to provide whether it's wind or rain, and overwhelmingly people had prepared, and that was the benefit of the way that we did get in early. People did prepare their homes, so that made the world of difference in that regard. Today's challenge is obviously the amount of rainfall, and it could fall across a really wide catchment. So we're just saying to people, just make sure you know if you are in one of those areas, just have your plans in place. If you're not, just make sure you use common sense. And look, we still have some big challenges. Electricity is one of them. I've just finished addressing some teams who are about to head out in the rain to try to reconnect power for hundreds of thousands of Queenslanders. Now, we had pre-positioned them, 1,200 staff from the Energex network, that's in the southeast of the state. There's 800 from the Ergon network who are coming here to help many of the people who have been helping them over recent months. So it just shows you that real collegiality. But they are going to be working in some really difficult conditions today. But when you think about it on a scale, there's about 330,000 homes and businesses still without power, despite the fact that over the course of this event, they've connected about 100,000. So it's a really, really big challenge. But it's a challenge that we prepared for, and it's a challenge that they will rise to.
Because if this is the largest loss of power that Queensland has ever faced from a natural disaster, it really puts the scale of this incident to test.
It certainly does. Now, obviously, events like Yazzie in North Queensland were far more intense, but the sheer scale of the population over this area, it shows you, how important things like telecommunications, like water, like electricity are. But we did a lot of work to make sure that we were able to deal with this. And so now we have to make sure that we go from response to recovery. And it's just so important that we take every opportunity we can to do the things that we normally take for granted but are essential. So this afternoon I'll be addressing Queenslanders about what tomorrow can look like, things like schools and elective surgery and public transport. We've got to do all we can to get those things back up and running as quickly as possible, always with safety in mind, but with an overlying view that we just have to make sure that people can go about their business. And throughout this, we've given people information and they've responded. Overwhelmingly, Queenslanders have responded really, really well. They've done the little things to stay safe at home, but they've also continued to go about their lives. And that's the way that you've got to handle challenges.
And when do you think things will get back to normal? When will schools open and airports reopen and public transport and things like that?
Well, we'll make sure we address all that this afternoon, but I make the observation at the other end of the state, we're still in recovery mode after the huge flooding that we saw in North Queensland, and that work continues, and as it will at the other part of Queensland here in the southeast. But it's about preparation, and we did prepare well across the board, and we have responded well. And I am really, really grateful. When you think about it, we've got people, whether they're rural fire officers, whether they're Queensland fire officers, police. We had 2,000 staff the night before last stay in the hospitals to be able to provide emergency department services. Like today, we've got over 1,000 people going out in the rain to reconnect people's electricity. It does show you the level of goodwill.
Certainly does show the level of goodwill. It certainly does show how much work ahead and the level of goodwill. David Crisafulli, thank you very much for joining us on Weekend Breakfast.